You are now entering a parallel universe. And wipe your feet on the way in.
Marc Riley, BBC Six Music.
Jojo Gunn and Run, Run, Run. I'm Marc Riley, whilst over in Yorkshire and partial to a run himself is Rob Hughes.
Oh, I am partial to a run, although I've not been for a while because it's been a bit nippy at this end of the woods, just in the morning, so it's a bit cold. Go for a run.
I can imagine, mate, I can imagine. And great start there, mate, Jojo Gunn. And I tell you what gives me just a little bit of confidence in my own self-worth is the fact that I loved Jojo Gunn, Run, 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 when it came out when I was 11 years old, and I still love it now.
It's a great tune,
What
no doubt
can you
about
say?
it. Yeah, it's Adrian. What a way to start, eh? So they're in the charts as well. There was a sort of, correct me if I'm wrong here, wasn't there a slight spirit connection with Jojo Gunn? Was it Jay Ferguson, I think, maybe, was involved?
I was going to ask you the same thing, because it was in the back of my mind, because we've covered them before, somewhere or other, possibly in the parallel universe from 18 years ago. Who knows?
Very, very possibly. Anyway, so we're looking at discs. So they've dropped the And Music Echo by this point, a disc from 22nd of April 1972. And on the news page here, you've got Elton John. His new single is Rocket Man. Will visit Houston's Manned Spacecraft Center during his next American tour, opening in Texas at the end of the month. NASA has approved his visit to Houston when he'll meet and have lunch with Apollo 15 Command Module pilot Al Warden. April 28th is Splashdown Day for Apollo 16, and although mission control is closed to outsiders, Elton expects to be at the center to share the excitement. I mean, I get the fact he was a big star and everything, but I mean, is this essentially because he had a single out called Rocket Man?
Was he that big at that point in time, though? I mean, Rocket Man, wasn't that really his first proper hit, or was it your song?
Well, I'm not sure about the States. Maybe it was Crocodile Rock or something, but it was around this time he's taking off, but no pun intended, obviously, with Rocket Man. But it was, I wonder, he wrote a song about a space mission and gets invited to NASA.
And some people did suggest that it was a bit of a lift from Space Odyssey, but of course he didn't write the words anyway, did he? Bernie Taupin did, so fairly
he did. Indeed. Next to that, you've got Creedence Clearwater Revival's new album, Mardi Gras, will be released in the UK through RCA, following a deal with US fantasy labels. It's the first Creedence album for 15 months since Tom Fogerty quit. On it, drummer Stu Cook and bassist Doug Clifford are featured as both singers and writers alongside John Fogerty. This was kind of well, it wasn't even the beginning of the end. This was the end, essentially, wasn't it? But for a long time, Clifford and Cook had been pushing for more creative control in Creedence. And you've got a genius pop songwriter there in John Fogerty, but they were insistent that they wanted a bit more.
Was this, the age-old thing whereby, and I won't go into the bands because it's not nice really, but where there's a lesser talented brother who just felt kind of overshadowed and besmirched, and I'm not talking about Oasis here, actually, because they're both hugely talented, aren't they? So I'm not talking about them, but, did Tom resent his brother?
I think, from what I've read, I think he did, because Tom started off as the singer, he was the front man, and then John came along, obviously the younger brother. John comes along and realises he's a great songwriter who could do these incredible, catchy 3-minute rock and roll songs, and that's how it worked out. And so Tom had to make do with just playing rhythm guitar.
Mate, I think you just explained it all there when you said that he was a younger brother, John Fogerty. So there, it makes sense. And what you're saying about the backing band, it just draws a parallel with Cockney Rebel, does it not? Because they all kind of like the band got in touch with Steve Harley and said, look, we want to be writing more songs. And Steve Harley apparently said, give me one more album and then we'll start sharing the tunes out on an album. They said, no, now. And he went, all right, bye. And he wrote on the back of that, the story was Come Up and See Me, which is a massive record for him.
Absolutely, yeah, totally. Just one more thing on the Creedence front. I don't know whether you saw it, but the last few days, Dave Haslam posted this picture of Creedence when they toured the UK in 1971, I think it was, and they were playing Manchester. And there's a great picture of them in the bar in the Peveril of the Peak, which is an old pub that I used to go in quite a bit, just off Oxford Road. It's a great shot. Just sat in the snug there, the three of them, four of them.
I've seen the shot, and then I would have thought it was Cox's Bar to begin with, which was just round the back from the Free Trade Hall, and then somebody said, no, it's in Didsbury, and that threw a bit of a curveball. But now if it's come to the point where, because we're going to try and identify the pub, because that's what people like us are like, and if you've come up with the Peveril of the Peak, you could well be right, mate. An amazing pub.
That could be the last time I looked, it was the Peveril. Anyway, Michael Jackson's American chart topper, Rockin' Robin, will be released in Britain early next month. Meanwhile, the Jacksons, heading for a group hit with Sugar Daddy, recently kicked off their 17-week cartoon series on London Weekend TV. It features the group in animated form with the real Jackson voices singing. So I think this was the first animated, pop group series that I ever watched, because I was a bit sort of young to see the Beatles animated series. I do remember watching this and how kind of novel and exciting it was.
There was one for the Osmonds as well, wasn't there? I don't know which one came first. Right, okay. I saw them both, though, obviously being a toddler at the time.
Yeah, over in the States, meanwhile, a Hollywood TV company has just completed auditioning 500 boys for a TV series called The Funky Five, to be based on the career of the teenage Motown supergroup. And still in the States, Sly Stone, it would seem, isn't getting any more polite or punctual. Reports have come back from a benefit show he did at a college near Seattle, where he kept the audience waiting for 2 hours while he watched TV in his dressing room.
It might have been the World Cup or something.
Could have been the Olympics, I suppose. Oh, no, it's April. Anyway, underneath that, Dr. Robert Moog, inventor of the Moog, has made a percussive version for ELP's Carl Palmer, which he tested for the first time in Buffalo last week. Apparently very pleased with the results, and Carl plans to use it always from now on. Percussive Moog, isn't that a bit of a cheat?
Well, I mean, I hate to pull you up in public, Bob. You know that.
Well, go ahead.
But it's Moog, innit?
Oh, is it Moog? I thought it was Moog.
No, it's Moog.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay,
anyway.
Fair enough. All festival news. This is quite interesting. Lincoln's Great Western Express and the Bickershaw Festival have now confirmed the day-to-day programmes of artists appearing. Ry Cooder has just been added to the Lincoln bill. Won't go through it all, but Lincoln Festival has got Rory Gallagher, Groundhogs, Straubs, Ry Cooder, Buddy Miles, Nazareth, Sly Stone. Bickershaw, which runs from May the 5th to the 7th, has the following: Roy Harper, Third Ear Band, Captain Beefheart famously, Captain Beyond, Flaming Groovies, the Haydock Colliery Brass Band, New Riders of the Purple Sage, America, and Grateful Dead. So this was, it's famous, wasn't it, Bickershaw, for, it was a place just outside of Wigan, for being a mud bath, essentially. That's what it turned into, wasn't it?
It's famous for a few things, because it was promoted by Jeremy Beadle, wasn't it, of You've Been Framed.
It was, yeah.
And I know two people who went to it, and one of them sadly is no longer with us. So Chris Seavey, Frank Sidebottom, he went to it, I know that much. And one of my oldest friends, Tony Husband, was there as well. And in fact, Tony Husband, I think he asked Captain Beefheart for his hat. And he wouldn't give it to him. It was a knitted hat, and Captain Beefheart's wife, Jan, is it, or Jan? He said, no, you can't have that. I'll do a doodle for you. So he does this weird little doodle and gives it to Tony on a piece of paper. And then it was, I got it and got a print of it years later and put it on a Creepers album.
Oh, of course, I know it. Yeah.
So we've got we've got Captain Beefheart did the artwork for the Creepers, and obviously he didn't know anything about it, thankfully.
Yeah, how wonderful though. Also there, of course, Joe Strummer, wasn't he? He was really taken with Beefheart, apparently.
Was he? Right.
Yeah, he was. And Elvis Costello went there to see Grateful Dead. And the story goes that he was so impressed that it sort of inspired him to start his own band.
Right.
That was the story.
Okay.
Anyway.
Well, a big festival then. But like you say, a mud bath and a bit all over the place and things running late and all that. The usual thing. Festivals in 1972.
Ooh.
Yeah. It's the dark ages, isn't it?
Anyway, we mentioned, didn't we, the Groundhogs were playing at the Lincoln Festival, so maybe that's a sign.
It's a sign.
Strangely still, not a sound, not a bird outside. Dark clouds gather from afar, circumstances right. Bursts up building, no place here for no one to hide. And I wonder why. And I wonder why. Sulfur fumes choke the light from a burning man. Lava flow drags his house across the red hot land. So many ways to die, but leave it up to man. He'll invent some more.
Groundhogs and Wages of Peace. And talking of hogs, if anybody missed Pigs today, live in session for Craig Charles, and you need to go to BBC Sound. You need to do yourself that particular favour. I'm Mark Riley, that is Bob Hughes, and we are in the parallel universe.
We are indeed looking at disc from 22nd of April 1972, and on page 3 here, London's Royal Albert Hall's ban on pop shows, announced in last week's national press, was described as a joke by rock stars and promoters alike. And news of the Albert Hall's decision comes just weeks after the closure of the Rainbow, leaving London without a major rock venue aside from the Lyceum. Mott the Hoople's Ian Hunter, banned from the Albert Hall a year ago when fans' excitement damaged one of the boxes, exploded. It's totally insane, he says, and totally expected. The Royal Albert Hall and its staff, and especially the staff's children, are banned from all Mott the Hoople gigs in future. I'm sorry, I can't be serious, because the whole thing is such a joke. It did cause a real stir, didn't it, this? It was a notorious incident.
Yeah, I mean, I've been to a couple of gigs at the Royal Albert Hall. One was David Bedford's Odyssey, and it was pretty dull, I have to say. But with Mike Oldfield and Peter Bardens of Camel and all that kind of stuff.
Wow.
And it's all sedate and everybody just nodding, and, you know, they got the flares on and all that. But Mott the Hoople, at that point in time, 1971, they were just followed round by a load of hairy arse builders, as we know. And funny enough, we played Mama's Little Jewel from Mott the Hoople from 1972 earlier in the programme.
Ah, right, okay. The Flaming Groovies have deserted the West Coast for the time being in despair, it says. The novelty of watching countless other San Francisco bands overtake them and blossom into fame has worn a little thin after 6 years, so the Groovies have sent their forerunner, Cyril Jordan, over here to suss out houses and recording facilities. We were together before the whole Grateful Dead airplane thing happened, really, says Cyril, who wears reflecting sunglasses and a leather jacket. There are a lot of bands around the Bay Area on the same level as us, and we were local, which is more than you can say for the Dead or the Airplane. So the band now plans to record at Rockfield Studios in Monmouth, where they were so impressed with the sound that Dave Edmunds.
BBC Sounds app.
This is BBC Radio 6 Music.
Right now.
Chips on Radio 6 with Mark Riley. BBC Radio 6 Music.
Say, with Mike Oldfield and Peter Bardens of Camel and all that kind of stuff.
Wow.
And it's all sedate and everybody just nodding, and, you know, they got the flares on and all that. But Mott the Hoople, at that point in time, 1971, they were just followed round by a load of hairy arse builders, as we know. And funny enough, we played Mama's Little Jewel from Mott the Hoople from 1972 earlier in the programme.
Ah, right, okay. The Flaming Groovies have deserted the West Coast for the time being in despair, it says. The novelty of watching countless other San Francisco bands overtake them and blossom into fame has worn a little thin after 6 years, so the Groovies have sent their forerunner, Cyril Jordan, over here to suss out houses and recording facilities. We were together before the whole Grateful Dead airplane thing happened, really, says Cyril, who wears reflecting sunglasses and a leather jacket. There are a lot of bands around the Bay Area on the same level as us, and we were local, which is more you can say for the Dead or the Airplane. So the band now plans to record at Rockfield Studios in Monmouth, where they were so impressed with the sound that Dave Edmunds got up there. He says San Francisco has been a real drag. The best bands in the world have played there for years, and with that whole cool local scene, nobody wanted to hear the locals. So understandably, says Disc, the Groovies are pinning their hopes on their salvation on Britain. So this was they were sort of, they started, obviously, the kind of psychedelic garage rock proto-punk band, weren't they, in the very early days? And then they came over here. They recorded with Dave Edmunds at Rockfield, but we didn't see the results for another few years after this.
It's funny, though, because, again, it's one of those where I think you answered the question yourself, really, because they're talking about the Grateful Dead and Jefferson Airplane overtaking them, but there are the Flaming Groovies in the leather jackets and reflective shades. They were just out of kilter, weren't they? And ahead of the time, in a way, you know.
Yeah, obviously they came back eventually, didn't we, with Shake Some Action, which did all right. But it was essentially kind of going back to British invasion-style pop, wasn't it? That was what the route they chose to go down.
Yeah, and they got a bit jangly and birds as well, didn't they, at some points? But anyway.
They did. Definitely. Ray Davies is interviewed by Lisa Robinson on Centre Pages, talking about all sorts of stuff, including the Kinks' most recent album, Muswell Hillbillies, about performing on stage, adopting different characters. And it's pretty well known, isn't he? He's always had this slightly ambiguous relationship with his chosen profession. He says, people think I'm strong, and I'm not really, I'm weak. If I hadn't done all this, I think I would have gone to the other extreme and gone to the Outer Hebrides to live and been a sculptor or a painter and hide under a big pullover.
Right.
So, not rock star material. He's also asked about the story. This is something we've sort of brought up a few times about the Kinks not being able to play in America for a while because of some fight, supposedly, that Ray had with a stage manager. So he puts the record straight here, he thinks. He says, we were doing a Dick Clark show and been there for 3 days, just standing around. Peter and Gordon were there as well. They had a changing room as big as a shoebox, and somebody said, you wait till the communists take over Great Britain. Well, that was just too much for me to take. I lashed out at him. I wasn't drunk, but you just shouldn't say, wait until the communists take over Great Britain. It infuriated me. So that was it.
Right.
That was, according to Ray Davies, that was the whole reason. I thought it was all about unions and rates and payback and God knows what else.
He's probably getting out. Wait until the communists take over and that haircut will go, mate. You'll have a short back and sides and you will like it.
Just briefly as well, Jimmy Page is interviewed on the back page interviewed by Monica Foote, and he says, if I wasn't into rock, I'd be living somewhere in Wales in a commune. They're all trying to get out of it.
Yeah, he's bonkers. Well, he went off to a little commune in Wales to record, didn't he, with Led Zeppelin? So,
He
anyway.
did. He did indeed. Anyway, so in the album charts, we've got, the soundtrack for Superfly.
Curtis Mayfield, there you go. Slightly truncated with apologies. Curtis Mayfield and Freddie's Dead. Mark Riley, Bob Hughes, PU.
April 1972. Gigs this week. You've got the Wilson Pickett Review at Sheffield Top Rank, the Beach Boys at the Kinetic Circus in Birmingham, Grateful Dead at the Lyceum, the Kinks, it says, are confirmed to appear at the Bickershaw Festival on the 6th of May, Chris Christopherson at Manchester Free Trade Hall, Temptations at Sheffield Fiesta, Mott the Hoople mentioned before at the Lyceum, Edgar Broughton Band at High Wycombe Town Hall, Robert Wyatt's excellent band, it says, Matching Mole at Plymouth Van Dyke, Jerry Lee Lewis at Stockton ABC, we've got the Pretty Things at Archer Hall in Billericay, Soft Machine at the Greyhound in Croydon, Supertramp at Orpington Civic Hall, and Pentangle at the Davenport Theatre in Stockport. Whoa!
Wow.
On the teasers front, kind of bits of news. Rita Coolidge is being blamed for the romance breakup of Chris Christopherson and Samantha Egger. This is a long story, but if people know the David Crosby song Cowboy Movie, that is essentially an allegory of how CSNY split up and certain things came between them.
Right.
All right.
Yeah, say no more.
Yeah, and Slade are having their first ever holidays since getting together. Don Powell is heading off to Spain. Dave Hill's is missing somewhere in London, it says. Jimmy Lee is going to Bournemouth, while singer Noddy Holder is camping in the Welsh mountains. I love that. It's kind of parallels of Vic and Bob, really, isn't it?
Brilliant.
Live reviews, just very, very quickly. Andrew Tyler's in New York to see a bill of various British acts at the Academy on 14th Street. He says it's not the prettiest part of New York. The place holds about 3,000 people, and it's about 2/3 full with the city's hairiest. So it's Long John Baldry, Fleetwood Mac, and Savoy Brown. It says Long John Baldry is on stage. In between numbers, he takes a couple of slugs of brandy and catches what dribbles into his beard with a giant towel. Oh, for a time machine, Mark.
Bit of class.
Oh. Anyway, I was going to say in the album charts, sadly, inexplicably not in the album charts, Nick Drake.
Okay, so we're going to go now with Nick Drake and Pink Moon. Thanks to you and to everybody who's been listening. Giddy's next. And I'll see you on Thursday night, Ezra tomorrow. Cheers all, bye-bye.
I saw it written and I saw it say, Bingo Moon is on its way. None of you stand so tall. Bingo Moon gonna get you all. It's a Bingo Moon. There's a Bingo Moon. Bing, 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 bing. Bingo Moon. Bing, 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 bing. Bingo Moon. Saw it written and I saw it say, the Bingo Moon is on its way. And none of you stand so tall. The Bingo Moon gonna get you home. It's a Bingo Moon. Yeah, it's a Bingo Moon.
Prepare to exit the parallel universe.
Mark Riley, BBC Six Music.
And shut the door on your way out.